Hey everyone, Virginia McClain here to read Victoria Marmot and the Meddling Goddess, Chapter 18. And I did not manage to get 2 more chapters read yesterday, and in fact, then didn't even get a chance to post the chapter that I did read yesterday. So you may notice I'm not wearing the same outfit, etc. Time lapse. But I am going to go ahead and do at least 1 more chapter right now. I don't know that I'll get through 3 chapters total. I may just post 2, chapter 17 and 18, and hopefully that'll be enough. Yeah, it's finding it hard to come by time where I can actually record without having a lot of clatter in the background. So I'm sure everyone is familiar with that by now at this stage of quarantine. I was counting it out, and it's been 64 days that we have been in, that we've been isolating. That is to say, our little family unit. Not everybody, but okay. So, chapter 18 in Victoria Marmot and the Meddling Goddess. When last we left our hero, she passed out because we're not sure why, but she passed out just after being informed that her brother was still alive and that Soledad knew where he was. So we're not sure why that led to Vic passing out, but it did. So that's where we were. And now here we go with chapter 18. The tea kettle still hadn't boiled when I opened my eyes to find Seamus holding my hand and whimpering at me even though he was in human form. I'm okay, I said, shaking him off and sitting up slowly. I'm not sure, actually. My head feels like I'm recovering from a bender. I'd never actually been on a bender, but the one time I'd gotten drunk at a cousin's wedding, it had kind of felt like this the morning after. Seamus helped me to my feet, despite my best efforts to shake him off, and I couldn't decide if I was appreciative of his concern or peeved by his coddling. Honestly, I was shaky enough that I was leaning towards appreciative. The peeved part of me was probably a holdover from his interference in the fight, where he'd gotten in my way and wound up causing Sol to bite me, which had turned me into a freaking snow leopard. Did I hallucinate that? I asked, even as I checked out my ankle and found it devoid of any sign that it had been bitten by a 300-pound panther. My brain seemed to be ignoring the fact that the run-up to that question had all been in my head. Hallucinate what, gatita? Sol asked, handing me a cup of Earl Grey. Drink this. It will help with the headache. Didn't you infuse it with Eye of Newt or something? I asked, eyeing the cup warily. Sol laughed. No, caffeine helps with headaches, that's all. I'd make you a coffee, but I don't see a coffee maker, so... I shrugged and took a sip of the Earl Grey, not bothering to mention that my AeroPress, which was probably still in my backpack from the weekend anyway, or the fact that there was a coffee pot hidden somewhere in the pile of boxes I had yet to unpack in the garage. Honestly, just doing something as normal as sipping tea helped me let go of some of the tension in my neck and shoulders. Me turning into a snow leopard, I asked, trying to get back on the subject at hand, instead of getting sidetracked by home remedies. Did I actually turn into a snow leopard, or was that just a freaky hallucination? I don't have any signs of a bite on my leg. Yes, you turned into a snow leopard. The signs of it disappeared because you shifted afterwards. The bite was small and shifting speeds up healing, Seamus said. Then he smiled. See? I told you weren't just a normal human. The look on his face made it sound like it should have been the best news in the world, but even though turning into a snow leopard was basically a childhood dream come true, the whole thing just felt like a betrayal. How is it possible my parents never told me about this? Seamus looked at Sol quizzically. I told you she might not remember, Sol said, making me even more confused. What? What am I not remembering? Vic, Sol said there were some powerful mage spells put on you and your parents when you were a kid. What? Why? That didn't sound good. None of this sounded good, and my headache was coming back with a vengeance. Do you remember what we were talking about just before you passed out? Seamus asked. His voice sounded gentle, like he was about to pull off a Band-Aid, but wanted to lessen the sting. I tried to think back to what we talked about before I'd blacked out. But it just made my headache rage, and I couldn't think through the pain anymore. I cradled my head in my hands, in my arms, and focused on not vomiting. This isn't going to work. The spell is too strong. She's just going to keep passing out every time we bring it up, Sol said, though I could barely hear her over the pounding in my ears. What if she shifts and we tell her snow leopard? That might work, Sol said after a pause. If the spell was only cast on her human form, her snow leopard might be free of it. It won't work if it was a spirit binding, but if it was just a corporal spell, that should do the trick. She hesitated for a moment. Nice thinking, puppy. If I'd been in less pain, I might have given her a talking to about backhanded compliments. As it was, the headache was still raging, and besides, Seamus could probably take care of himself. I might have heard a growl, but it was hard to tell over the sound of my skull being stabbed repeatedly with a knife, metaphorically speaking. Vic, can you hear me? Sol asked. I nodded, and then instantly regretted it. Mental note, do not move head. Vic, can you manage a shift? Do you have any idea how to call on your snow leopard right now? I did not shake my head, but talking seemed like an impossibility with my jaw seizing with pain, so I just whimpered a bit and hoped that got my point across. Okay, Seamus is going to talk you through it. I had no idea why Seamus was being voluntold to take care of me, but I was in no position to argue or second guess. Okay, Vic, just try to relax if you can. Can you remember what it felt like to be a snow leopard? Try to imagine it. What was different about the way you normally move, smell, see, taste, balance? Try to picture those things and then sort of will them into being. Sol snorted, and I wondered if she thought Seamus's instructions were lacking in some way. I tried to do what Seamus said, but the pain was too much for my concentration. Vic, Sol said, her voice getting closer to where my head was cradled in my own arms. If you manage the shift, the headache should go away. Suddenly, I found the will to concentrate. At that moment, I would have done anything to make the headache go away, and damned if I wasn't going to figure out how to turn into a snow leopard right that fucking moment. I tried recalling the details that Seamus had suggested, but it was hard to come up with things like sight, sound, and smell right then. My brain was overtaken with pain, and those kinds of details were hard to recall even on a good day, so I focused on the parts of me that didn't hurt. The sensation of having 4 paws, the agility to right myself mid-fall, the balance of a giant, glorious snow leopard tail. Then, suddenly, I was calling on my tail, paws, and agility to balance me as I slid from a precarious perch on a stool and the kitchen island and fell to the floor. I smiled delightedly when I landed on 4 paws, and then smiled wider still when I realized the damned headache was gone. Is she purring? Seamus asked, his face bewildered. Sol just laughed. I looked at them both expectantly. I wanted to know about whatever it was I had forgotten. Okay, Vic, now do you remember what we were talking about before you passed out? Oddly, I still had access to those memories, which was weird because those memories were in human form, and currently I was a very large feline. I ignored the disconnect and focused on the memories themselves. We had been talking about my parents, and them not telling me I was aware, and then Sol had started to explain why, and I sat down with a thud, my tail flipping angrily about me as the weight of memory hit me. My brother. I had a brother, and he was still alive, and Sol knew where he was. And then the floodgates opened. Images of my childhood that had been blocked or that I had repressed. A little boy, my age, my height, similar features, just a boy, and clever and mischievous, and we had so many adventures together, and did snow leopards cry? Or I shut my mouth and looked at Seamus and Sol, and the horrified looks on their faces confirmed that I had been making a truly terrible noise. So I focused on the feeling of tears in my eyes and grief in my throat, and suddenly I was sitting in the middle of my kitchen floor, naked and sobbing. And that's the end of chapter 18. All right, I might give a shot at recording chapter 19. We'll see what happens. I hope that this is finding people well. It's been a rough few days for us, but yeah, I hope that people are doing okay and that these chapters are helping a little bit, maybe. See you in the next video.